Some of the joys of my recent career are that I get to visit with real people who have real problems, have real plans, and then start making real progress in South Dakota. These ranchers, farmers, guys who really think outside the box. And equally, one of my regrets is that not all of those things have been made public. I wish I had more time to do that. It just is something that I wanted to do. But I discovered this little gem, a little prairie island near Spearfish, South Dakota. So I'm going to let these two characters introduce themselves, tell their own story, and I'm going to get out of the way.
You know, I think that as your career sort of moves through its progressions and it evolves a little bit, there's certain things that you start to really pay attention to. And I think more and more I'm paying attention to the changes that are happening on our grasslands, especially with the displacement of a lot of our native species and the assemblages of our native species. And it makes it really fun to work with someone like Craig, who is working towards sort of conserving a lot of those properties that us as rangeland professionals have been trained are highly important. And really it's those principles of rangeland health. And I think that moving forward and as a profession, and especially in the western part of the northern Great Plains, I think that exotic species is the number one threat that we have to our rangelands right now outside of outright conversion.
I'm Craig Gardner. My wife and I bought the property just last May, actually. It's 80 acres, 30 acres of it's in pasture, 50 acres in cropland, and our goal is actually have a Scottish Highland business to work it, and we're going to lease 40 acres adjacent to it, and yeah, try to make a go at it. Well, I think the fun part for us was we didn't really know what we had. We knew we had bought land that had really good soil types, and one of the first observations I made on the pasture was that it looked a lot different than everything around it. And so one part of me was thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, we have something that's not very good.
My name is Mitch Faulkner. I'm the area rangeland specialist with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Belfouche. And when Craig first had me out on his property, showed me his cropland first, where he was putting in some cover crops and doing some things. But then he went and he showed me his native rangeland. And something kind of blew me away about it was just the amount of diversity and the amount of intact native grassland plants that were there really impressed me.
It was really helpful when Mitch first came out and actually identified that we had a very rich pasture and one that we really should and have the opportunity to work to make better. Because that's really one of our goals in life is to bring native pasture back into wherever we live.
So one of the things that we deal with here in the northern Black Hills are a lot of exotic non-native grass species, and also noxious weeds are an issue here too. So there's some real challenges with trying to maintain a native grassland plant community here. And it's not something that's ever going to go away. We're always going to have the threat, and we're going to have the pressure of these invasive grass species. But we have areas on our landscape where we have a lot of opportunity to not only maintain, but also enhance and improve our native plant communities. So yeah, there was exotic species, especially Kentucky bluegrass and some smooth brome that Craig was dealing with and that he knew was going to be an issue. And there were some other weeds that he was trying to treat as well, but I knew that we had an opportunity there because that plant community was in place. Now the challenge is applying the management to try to affect negatively those exotic cool season species and try to release from competition those desirable species that we have in our native plant community.
Well, I'm a retired wildlife biologist. I was in the state of Alaska as a biologist for 40 years. And yeah, and with that, came I think once a biologist, always a biologist, and you get kind of the conservation ethics, and then also I think desire to always learn the biology behind everything. And so that's where Mitch has been really good for me, because the questions he asks, the comments he makes. So I think, yeah, I've been really lucky that my career, I think, dovetails pretty nicely, but actually maybe it's just my own interest. But in the lands we were looking at, I was looking at what gave us the best chance to be successful just because of soil quality, and this land offered that. And so, and other than that, I really did not know really the South Dakota species and really what kind of grasses to look for and what kind of species. And then meeting Mitch and then taking the South Dakota Grassland Coalition class, brings you, just infinite steps up in what you can learn and then what you look at. And now for me, yeah, I'm looking at where are the native grasses and what's the cool season grasses and what's the warm season. And I'm still learning all the different grasses and shrubs, but that's where Mitch gets a lot of calls.
My job is to work with landowners and ranchers to help them achieve their natural resource goals. And part of that is developing a grazing plan and talking about grazing strategies and trying to figure out how to get where the producer wants to go. When you can work with a producer who has their goals and objectives already sort of clearly stated, they can take you out there and they can show you, hey, here's my problem. I want to remedy this and enhance something, or this is what I want to see from my pastures. It makes it much easier for us to have that conversation and really get in sync as to have these conversations and just bounce ideas off of each other. We always know where he wants to go. We know where that's going because Craig has a very specific objective in mind. And so it just makes our job so much easier, and it makes the communication and the planning process just go all that much more smoothly.
I think, again, working with Mitch and NRCS has really helped us kind of crystallize our goals for our land management ideas. And the reason we had to know why. And so we knew what we had after doing the inventory and stuff, but again, when you're making these steps, you have to understand why you're making all these different steps. And so it's helped us not just think, what am I doing tomorrow, is what am I going to be doing in 2 years. It's easy to understand what I got to do tomorrow. I got to, kick the cows into a different paddock. But that reason, that why, the how becomes easy, the where becomes easy, the when becomes easy. But the why, I think, is the important question. Why are we doing each one of the steps? And I think with the class and with Mitch's leadership and stuff, we're starting to really understand, if we do this, we can maybe expect this, not tomorrow, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, but, well, that's good enough. It's become actually a kind of almost a mantra for me, is that, you're not managing cows, you're managing grass. And and I think that's the why questions is what's going to get us there.
So when we started building a grazing plan with Craig, and it's sort of this process in evolution right now, but yeah, the carrying capacity of the property is the number one thought that we have in our mind. Do we have enough grass here to get Craig through for the 12-month period that's his goal of grazing? And then Craig mentioned before that you have to know what you have. You need a good resource inventory. And he knows where his forage resource is. He knows where his opportunities are with basically enhancing some of his native grassland. He knows the areas that are just going to be exotic, cool season grasses, and we're going to have to utilize them as we can. But the number one thing that we're looking to do is, so from a big picture standpoint, there's some things that we're going to put into his native rangeland. And we're going to try to change the timing that we're in those pastures, especially when we can impact those tall, warm season plants, because those are our key species here that we're managing for. So if we're in pasture 2 in July in year 1, we don't want to be there in the midsummer in year 2, or we want to try to slide that change of season of use as much as we can. Now, we might be in pasture 2 in the spring and the fall for 2 years in a row, maybe 3 years, but we're doing it because we have a purpose there. We have an objective of managing that exotic cool season. But I would say that there's a very simple concept of changing season of use. And as much as you can slide those use periods to change between years for your key species, I think that's really important to maintaining that. And then Craig is working with how's the best way to use his exotic cool season pasture where we don't have those opportunities to enhance the native warm season plant community. And that might be a good, sometimes flash it in the early summer, use it a little in the fall, use it in the winter time. That's going to be that pasture, that we're going to be using to try to really complement what's going on the native plant community. But also that's where we're going to get a lot of our use and be able to balance that 12-month grazing season.
Well, the perimeter fence was easy. We just had to keep them in. But the electric fence to me has been way more intriguing. Where to place it. Again, to work around species competition. I mean, looking at the native pasture and knowing that the blue stem's here and there's some bluegrass here. So how can I run my electric fence where I can more effectively manage it? And so if I do want to protect the blue stem, I can easily do it. Again with just with some poly wire and break off some paddocks from it. So mainly the fencing was first set up with the idea that how can we again manage this pasture the best we can, and so that's how the location came. And then the distance again was thinking of how many cows we're going to eventually have, and so how wide our paddocks are going to be. So that kind of width was a little bit set up on our goal of cattle, and so now we can break it up easy and manage it better.
So there's some grazing techniques, and Craig is starting to employ some of those with the way that he's managing his rangeland right now. He basically has different sections that are management units, but within those management units, he's also using temporary electric fence to really kind of confine those livestock into small areas. And, he has that resource inventory already kind of done. He's been across his pastures. He knows the places that need help. So he's really targeting those animals, and he's worked to figure out where he's going to target those animals in the future in small areas where he can be there for a matter of a few days, utilize the grass the way he wants it used, especially the Kentucky bluegrass, and target those really small areas and then move on. And in doing so, he is going to be there for a very short period of time. So he's going to have minimum occupation periods with those livestock. But then by leaving and going somewhere else and continuously moving kind of across the unit, he's going to increase the amount of recovery time of the other plants that are his sort of key species in those areas.
All right, with looking at our year plan of grazing this land, we have to look at certain fundamentals that, and so again, for where I'm at in my knowledge level, what I'm thinking of first is really type of grass and warm season, cool season, the growing seasons, the nutritional productivity, and quantity, but really quality is the main thing. And then how many cows we're going to run out there, and then take all that and to get it to where our goal is to make a composition change in parts of first of all in the native range, try to really attack the Kentucky bluegrass and the smooth brome and crested, and really go after those species and see if we can graze them down. So taking that all in, how do we best for a 12-month grazing, how do we move the cows to have them be working for us to get to that goal? And so, and that's kind of, to me, it's really very complicated because, you got all these different kinds of grasses. You have, in amongst the native species, there's these little patches of invasives. So how can you bring the cows in and get to where you get the invasives, but not harm your warm seasons at the wrong time of the year? And so the grazing plan to me is still something I'm very much relying on people way smarter than I am. But I think I'm starting to get the idea of what we're trying to do and how we're going to go about it. But the actual, probably specific steps in certain times of the year, there's still a lot of science to it that I don't understand.
So a few of the things that Craig and I look at when we are looking at his grass and his pastures is we're always kind of coming back to these rangeland health principles. And so it's obvious, some of the principles have to do with, is there active erosion occurring, and are there issues that are big and obvious, and those aren't occurring on Craig's property. But we're always talking about some of these same things over and over. And one of them is maintaining the diversity that's on this piece of rangeland that Craig's managing. And we have native shrubs, and not only native shrubs, a legume. We have a few different species of native shrubs actually, but lead plant is actually quite prevalent here. We have tall, warm season rhizomatous grasses. We have warm season bunch grasses. We have cool season bunch grasses. We have a huge diversity of forbs, and we have some warm season bunch grasses that are pretty rare actually for this area out here. So we're always talking about maintaining that diversity, or those different functional structural groups that are providing different rooting structures in the soil and that are harvesting energy during different parts of the year to make this property, kind of a continuously growing that live root in the ground, and that diversity is happening.
We shot this particular sequence in 2022. I've spoken to Craig Gardner, and right now he has 15 animals. He's bringing in some sheep to take care of some of the leafy spurge. And wonder of wonders, he's converting cropland back to prairie. That really made my heart warm. This is not the end. Craig is on a journey like any farmer or rancher. It's always a journey. There's never an end. While we were filming Mitch and Craig in this draw, the day was very calm and we had a lot of flies, and I noticed a fly crawling on Mitch's face, and he never touched it, he never swatted it. And I thought that was kind of hilarious. He kind of won the Zen prize there.
The Zen.
Yeah, I felt that thing, and I'm like, where are you going? How far are you going to get?
You passed the Zen test.
I did.
Mitch, this one's for you.